How could you sell the condo? I promised it to my wife. Hand over the sale money right now." Devin screamed those words at me with a fury I had never seen in his eyes. Tasha wept behind him, clutching her chest as if she were having a panic attack. But I just took a deep breath and said calmly, "There's a second piece of news you need to hear." As the words left my mouth, I watched my son's face change. First confusion, then fear, then that tremor in his hands that only appears when someone feels the floor giving way beneath their feet. "But Mom," he stammered, his voice cracking, "my wife and I have nowhere to go. We can't live on the street." And right then, in that precise moment, I knew I had won, because for years, I was the one who trembled. I was the one who begged. I was the one who lived in fear. But that woman doesn't exist anymore. My name is Clara Mae Johnson. I'm 65 years old, and until 6 months ago, I was invisible. Invisible to my son, invisible to my daughter-in-law, and invisible even to myself. I lived in a 2-bedroom unit that my late husband and I bought 30 years ago. It wasn't fancy. The walls had water stains in the corners. The kitchen was small and dark, but it was mine. It was the only place in the world where I still existed as something more than a shadow. My husband Thomas passed away 7 years ago. He went in his sleep without pain, without a goodbye. And since that day, my life had become a silent routine. I woke up at 6 in the morning, brewed coffee in the same old percolator that made a strange sputtering noise. I swept the floor, looked out the window. I waited. He didn't even know what I was waiting for. Devin was my only child, my only close relative. After his father died, I thought we would get closer. I thought he'd visit more often, that he'd call to check on me, that maybe, just maybe, he'd invite me out to dinner sometimes. But no, Devon had his life. He had Tasha. He had his job, his friends, his plans, and I was just a number on his to-do list. A quick phone call every 2 weeks, an obligatory visit on Christmas. Nothing more. At first, I tried not to take it personally. I told myself it was normal, that children grow up and move on, that I couldn't be selfish. But loneliness is a heavy thing. It weighs on your chest like a stone, sinking you slowly, so gradually that you don't even notice until you can't breathe anymore. Devin's visits were always the same. He'd knock, walk in without a smile, and sit on the sofa with his phone in his hand. "Hey, Mom, how you holding up?" "I'm fine, son. And you?" "Good. Busy." Then silence. That uncomfortable silence filled only by the sounds of his cell phone notifications. I'd offer him coffee. He'd say he didn't have time. I'd ask about Tasha. He'd answer in clipped sentences. I'd try to tell him something about my day, about the neighbors, about anything. And he'd look at his watch. He always looked at his watch as if every minute with me was a minute stolen from his real life. But I smiled. I always smiled because he was my son. And a mother doesn't give up. A mother keeps trying even when it hurts, even when she's invisible. Tasha was different, or at least she seemed to be at first. When Devin first brought her home, she smiled a lot. She hugged me, called me Mama Clara in a sweet voice, and brought me cheap flowers from the supermarket. And I, so alone, so starved for affection, let myself be fooled. I thought I finally had someone else in my life, the daughter I never had, someone to talk to. But the flowers wilted, and with them Tasha's mask fell too. Little by little, I started noticing the glances, those quick looks she'd shoot around the apartment when she thought I wasn't watching. Glances that evaluated, that calculated, that measured the value of everything, the walls, the furniture, the space itself. And then I understood. To her, I wasn't a person. I was an obstacle between her and what she wanted. The insult started subtly, so subtly that at first I thought I was imagining them. One day Tasha arrived with Devin and said, "Mama Clara, this sofa is ancient. You really ought to replace it." I told her I didn't have the money for that. She smiled and said, "Well, when this unit is ours, the first thing we'll do is renovate everything. When it's ours," as if they had already decided, as if my death were just a pending formality. Another time they were having dinner at my place. I had cooked for hours. I'd made the smothered pork chops my son loved as a boy, but Tasha barely took a bite and said, "It's a little too salty, isn't it, Dev?" And my son, my own son, nodded without even looking at me. They left their plates almost full, and I, as always, said nothing. I just cleaned up in silence while they talked about their plans, their dreams, their future. A future where I didn't exist. But there was one moment that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the bathroom when I heard Devin and Tasha arrive. They hadn't told me they were coming. I heard their voices in the living room, and something in the tone made me freeze. It made me listen. "How much do you think this place is worth?" Tasha asked. I don't know, maybe $280,000, Devin replied. With that, we could put the down payment on a real house, a big one. Tasha's voice was filled with excitement. But your mom won't sell, will she, Devin? He laughed, a dry, chilling laugh. Nah, but she's not going to live forever. And when she goes, this place is mine. It's all the inheritance I've got. Tasha sighed, relieved. Thank goodness, because honestly, I don't know how much longer I can pretend to like her. I felt something shatter inside me, something that could never be repaired. I stayed in the bathroom, my hand over my mouth to keep silent. The tears fell freely, but they weren't tears of sadness. It was something deeper. It was the death of an illusion, the illusion that my son loved me, that I mattered to him even a little. When I finally came out, they were sitting on the sofa. Tasha smiled at me. Mama Clara, what a surprise. We didn't know you were home. A lie. They knew perfectly well. They just didn't care. Devin didn't even look up. He was checking his phone. And I smiled again. I offered them coffee. They declined. They stayed for 10 more minutes and left. I sat down on that old sofa they despised so much and asked myself, when did I become this? Someone waiting for her own death just to stop being a bother. The hours passed slowly after they left. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the city noises, the passing cars, the distant voices, the wind hitting the window. And at some point, between the darkness and the silence, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to keep waiting. I wasn't going to keep being invisible. I wasn't going to hand over my life to someone who was only waiting for me to die. For the first time in 7 years, I felt something close to rage. But it wasn't explosive rage. It was cold, calculated. It was the anger of someone who was finally waking up. The next morning, I woke up different. I don't know how to explain it. It was as if something inside me had hardened overnight, as if all the tears I'd shed had washed away something old and rotten, leaving space for something new, something stronger. I got up, made my coffee, but this time I didn't sit staring out the window like always. This time I took out an old notebook I had stored in a drawer and started writing. I wrote down everything I remembered, every insult, every hurtful word, every contemptuous look. I needed to see it. I needed to understand how blind I had been. And when I finished, I had filled 5 pages. 5 pages of proof that I hadn't imagined it, that I wasn't crazy, that they had genuinely reduced me to nothing. The humiliations didn't stop. They actually worsened. It was as if Devin and Tasha sensed I was changing and needed to remind me of my place. 2 weeks after the conversation I overheard, they came to visit again. This time they brought news. Mom, Devon said without even a greeting. We need to talk about something important. Tasha and I are house hunting. We want to start a family, but everything is so expensive. I nodded. I said nothing. I just waited. Then Tasha spoke with that falsely sweet voice I hated so much. Mama Clara, we know this unit is huge for just you. 2 bedrooms for 1 person. It's a waste, don't you think? You could live somewhere smaller, cozier, and maybe you could sell us this place at a fair price. Of course, a family price. A family price. The words sounded nice, but I knew what they meant. They meant they wanted me to give away my only asset, to hand over the home my husband and I had paid for with 30 years of hard work, just so they could start their lives without making sacrifices, without working hard like we did. I took a deep breath and told them, I'm not ready to sell. This place holds too many memories for me. Devin frowned. Mom, don't be selfish. You won't need it for much longer anyway. At your age, what's the point of clinging to material things? You should be thinking about your son, about your family. Tasha nodded, fake tears welling in her eyes. But we were really counting on this, Mama Clara. We'd already made plans. Plans? They had made plans with my life? With my home without even asking me. And the worst part was they said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world. As if I owed them my existence. I stayed silent. I didn't argue. I just told them I'd think about it. And they left satisfied, certain that sooner or later I would cave, because I always caved. I always ended up giving them what they wanted. But this time, something was different. This time, as I closed the door behind them, I didn't feel guilt. I felt determination. I felt clarity. And I knew exactly what I had to do. 3 more weeks passed. 3 weeks where Devin called me every day not to ask how I was, not to see if I needed anything, but just to pressure me. Mom, have you thought about what we talked about? Mom, we found a perfect house, but we need the down payment money. Mom, don't be difficult. And Tasha would send texts, long messages filled with sad face emojis. Mama Clara, I know it's hard for you, but think about the grandkids you could have. Don't you want your future grandchildren to have a good home? Every message was a blow. Every call was a reminder that to them, I was only a means to an end. And the rage kept growing, cold, silent, powerful. Then came the moment that changed everything for good. It was a Friday. I had gone to the bank for a simple task, updating my information, nothing major. But while I was waiting, I overheard two women talking. One, younger, was telling the other, my mother-in-law finally sold her house. She bought a small condo, and with the rest, she went traveling. She says she worked for others her whole life, and now she wants to live for herself. The other woman laughed. How brave. I wouldn't have the nerve to do that. My family would kill me. And the first one replied, but it's her money, her life. Why should she need to ask permission? Those words stuck with me. Why should I need to ask permission? It was my condo, my life, my decision. No one had given it to me. No one had paid a single dollar of the mortgage except my husband and me. And yet I had spent months feeling like I didn't have the right to do what I wanted with what was mine. That somehow I owed everything to Devin just for being my son. That wasn't love. That was manipulation. And I had allowed myself to be manipulated for too long. I left the bank with a clear idea, so clear that my own boldness startled me. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. It was now or never. That same afternoon, I searched online for real estate agencies. I found one with good reviews and called. A kind voice answered, "Good morning. How can we help you?" And my voice only trembling slightly, said, "I want to sell my condo fast. No big advertising, no letting too many people know." The woman on the other end asked a few questions, address, size, condition. Then she said, "We can send someone out tomorrow to do an appraisal." "Perfect," I replied and hung up. I sat on the sofa with the phone in my hand, feeling my heart pound. I had just taken the first step and there was no turning back. The next day, the agent came, a man in his 40s with a gray suit and a professional smile. He toured the apartment, took pictures, made notes, and finally told me, "Mrs. Johnson, this place could sell for around $280,000. Maybe a little more if we do some minor repairs, but if you want to sell fast, like you said, we could get $250,000 in less than a month." I nodded. "Let's do it." He looked surprised. "You don't want to consult with your family first?" "Most people." I cut him off. "I don't need to consult with anyone. It's my decision." He smiled, handed me the papers to sign, and a week later, there was an interested buyer, a young couple who needed to move quickly for a job. They offered $270,000 cash, no financing, no complications. I accepted immediately. During all this time, I said nothing to Devin. He kept calling, kept pressuring. "Mom, have you decided we need an answer? Tasha is getting anxious." And I answered with evasions. "I'm still thinking, son, give me a little more time." He would grunt in frustration, but he didn't push too hard because he was sure I'd eventually cave, just like always. But while he waited confidently, I was signing papers, closing the sale, receiving the money in my bank account, and looking for a new place for myself, a smaller one-bedroom unit in a quiet neighborhood. It cost $175,000. I bought it outright, no mortgage, no debt, and the rest of the money, over $100,000, I put into an investment account the bank recommended. The move was quick. I hired a small company. I packed only the essentials: clothes, some books, photos of my husband, the memories that truly mattered. I sold or gave away the rest. I didn't need much. I never had. And 3 weeks after making the decision, I was already living in my new condo. It was small, yes, but it had natural light, a functional kitchen, a clean bathroom, and most importantly, it was entirely mine. No one had a key. No one had set foot in that place before me. It was my space, my new beginning. And for the first time in years, I felt at peace. But I knew the storm was coming. Devin still didn't know anything, and when he found out, all hell would break loose. So, I prepared myself. I put all the sale documents in a binder. I printed bank statements showing where the money was, and most importantly, I had secretly recorded the last conversations with Devin and Tasha, the ones where they talked about the condo as if it were already theirs, where they planned what they'd do with it when I died, where Tasha complained about having to fake liking me. I had all the evidence, and I was ready. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was arranging the last books on the shelf of my new condo when the phone rang. It was Devin. His voice sounded strangely cheerful. "Mom. Hey, good thing you answered. Tasha and I want to take you out to dinner this Friday. Haven't spent time together in a while." I paused. Devin never invited me out to dinner. Never. Sure, son. What time? 7. We'll pick you up, and don't worry about a thing. Our treat. I hung up and knew exactly what was happening. They had decided to change strategies. Direct pressure hadn't worked. Now came the soft manipulation, the fake gestures of affection, the forced kindness. But I was no longer the same naive woman as before. This time I knew exactly what to expect. Friday arrived and I dressed carefully. I put on a chocolate brown dress I'd bought years ago but rarely wore. I combed my hair, put on a little makeup. I wanted to look strong. Devin arrived right on time. He rang the bell at the old condo, the one that wasn't mine anymore. I waited a few seconds before going down. When I left the building, I saw him standing next to his car, frowning and looking at his phone. "Mom," he shouted when he saw me, "what took you so long?" I was about to come up. "I had to get ready," I replied calmly. We got in the car. Tasha was in the passenger seat. She turned to me with a huge smile. "Mama Clara, so good to see you. You look so sharp." Her words were honey, but her eyes were ice. We went to an Italian restaurant. It wasn't luxurious, but it wasn't cheap either. Devin chose a corner table away from the noise, away from other people. A perfect spot for a private conversation. We ordered food. Pasta for Tasha, steak for Devin. I ordered a simple salad. I wasn't hungry. My stomach was tied in a knot, not from fear, but from anticipation. For the first few minutes, they talked about trivial things. Devin's work, a friend of Tasha's who got married, the weather. I just listened, nodded, and smiled when necessary, and I waited because I knew the real reason for the dinner would come at any moment. It arrived just as the main courses were served. Devin wiped his mouth with his napkin and looked straight at me. "Mom, we need to talk about something serious. Tasha and I have been thinking a lot, and we're worried about you." I looked up. "Worried about me?" "Yes," Tasha said, leaning forward. "You're all alone in that big condo. At your age, anything could happen. A fall, a health issue, and there'd be no one there to help you." Devin nodded. "That's why we thought it would be better if you either moved in with us or if you sell the condo and buy something smaller, safer, closer to us." "Ah," I said simply, and they waited. They waited for me to respond with gratitude, with relief, with that submission I had always shown. But I just took a sip of water and said, "It's very considerate of you to worry about me." "I'll think about it." Tasha blinked, confused. "But we need an answer soon. Mama Clara, Devin and I already found a house. We just need the down payment money, and we thought if you sell your condo, you could give us a portion of it, like a loan, or maybe an advance on the inheritance." Her words were so blatant they almost made me laugh. An advance on the inheritance. As if my death were an event scheduled on their calendar, as if I were just taking up space until they could cash in. "I'll think about it," I repeated with the same calm. This time, Devin tensed up. "Mom, we've been talking about this for months. You can't keep stalling us." I felt the anger bubbling in my chest, but I didn't let it out. Not yet. Instead, I smiled. "Son, it's a big decision. I can't make it that fast. Give me a little more time." Tasha let out a dramatic sigh. "But Mama Clara, we were really counting on that money. We already told the owner we want the house. If we don't put down the deposit soon, we'll lose it. There's no other option. Your condo is our only plan." How convenient, I thought. Their only plan was my sacrifice. We finished dinner in uncomfortable silence. Devin paid the bill with a look of annoyance, and when they dropped me off at my building, Tasha gave me a cold hug. "Think hard, Mama Clara. We don't want to pressure you. We just want the best for everyone." The following days were an avalanche of messages. Tasha sent me photos of the house they wanted to buy. "Look, Mama Clara. It has 3 bedrooms, a yard, a garage. It would be perfect for when we have kids. Your grandkids could play here." Every message was a lure, every photo a manipulation. They were trying to get me to imagine a future that would never exist because I knew the truth. I knew that if I gave them the money, I would never see it again. I knew the grandchildren were just a fantasy to soften me up. I knew that once I had served my purpose, they would discard me, just like they always had, and I wasn't going to allow it. No. This time, Devin called too, but his calls were different, less sweet, more demanding. "Mom, I need an answer. Yes or no. It's simple." "It's not simple, son. It's my life. It's my savings." "But I'm your son, your only family. You shouldn't have to support me my whole life just for being your son." There was a silence on the other end, a heavy, dangerous silence. "So, are you saying you won't help us?" "I'm saying I need time to think." Devin hung up without saying goodbye, and I stared at the phone, feeling the last thread of love I had for him snap for good. Because a son who loves you doesn't pressure you like that. A son who loves you doesn't make you feel guilty for wanting to live your own life. A week later, Tasha showed up at my building unannounced. She rang the bell insistently. "Mama Clara, open up, please. We need to talk." I was about to leave for my new condo. I had left a few things I needed to pick up. I opened the door cautiously. Tasha's eyes were red. She looked like she'd been crying. "Can I come in?" We sat in the empty living room. Most of the furniture was gone. She looked around, confused, but didn't say anything. "Mama Clara," she began, her voice trembling. "I came to apologize. I know we've been really pushy. I know we pressured you, but we're desperate. Devin and I have been saving for years, and it's never enough. Everything is so expensive. And when we thought about your condo, we were filled with hope." Hope? What an interesting word to describe greed. Tasha continued, "I don't want you to think we only care about the money. We love you, Mama Clara, truly, and we want you to be a part of our lives, to live with us, to be the grandmother to our children. But for that, we need that space, we need that house. And you could make that happen. You could be our salvation." Her words were perfect, rehearsed, but empty, because if they really loved me, they wouldn't be there asking me to give them everything. They'd be there simply to be with me. "Tasha," I said finally, "let me ask you something. If I didn't have this condo, if I had nothing of value, would you still visit me?" She blinked. "Of course, Mama Clara. What kind of question is that? Then why in these last few months have you only sought me out to talk about the condo? Why do you never call just to see how I am? Why does every conversation end with the same request?" Tasha opened her mouth, but no words came out because there was no answer. Or rather, the answer was obvious, and she didn't want to admit it. She stayed silent for a few seconds, then stood up. "I think I came at a bad time. We'll talk later." And she left, leaving me alone in that empty room. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt free because every conversation, every manipulation, every lie only confirmed that I had made the right decision. That night, sitting in my new condo, I reviewed all the documents again. The deed to the new place, the receipts from the old sale, the recordings I had made. Everything was in order. Everything was ready. All that was left was the final moment, the confrontation. And I knew it would come soon because Devin and Tasha weren't patient, and their desperation would make them make a mistake. A mistake I was waiting for. I took a deep breath, drank a cup of hot tea, and mentally prepared for what was coming. Because the war was just beginning, and this time, I had all the weapons. The moment came 2 weeks later. I knew it would eventually happen, that Devin would lose his patience and show up unannounced, that he would try to confront me to force an answer out of me. That day finally arrived. It was Saturday morning. I was in my new condo having coffee by the window, watching life pass on the street. My phone rang. It was Devin. "Mom, I'm on my way to your place. We need to finish this conversation today. You can't keep avoiding us. I'll be there in half an hour." He hung up before I could answer. I stared at the phone. My heart beat fast, but not from fear. It was pure adrenaline. I had waited for this moment. I had prepared for it. And now it was here. I dressed calmly, comfortable slacks, a cream-colored blouse, nothing special. I tied my hair back, put on my shoes, and headed to the old unit. Yes, I still had the keys. The new owner wasn't moving in until the following week, so technically I could still go inside. I arrived before Devin, went up the stairs, unlocked the door, and waited. The condo was almost empty. Only a few boxes remained in the corners. The echo of my steps resonated off the bare walls. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and waited. 5 minutes later, I heard hurried footsteps in the hall. The door flew open. Devin burst in like a hurricane. Tasha followed behind him. "Mom," he started to say, but he stopped dead when he saw the empty apartment. His face shifted from confusion to alarm in a second. "What the hell is going on here? Where's the furniture? Where is everything?" I slowly stood up. "I sold it," I said calmly. "You sold the furniture?" Tasha asked in a high-pitched voice. "Not just the furniture," I replied. "I sold the condo, too." The silence that followed was deafening. Devon stared at me as if he didn't understand the words he had just heard. Tasha had gone pale. "What did you say?" Devon murmured. "I sold the condo." I repeated louder this time. 3 weeks ago. The papers have been signed. The transfer is done. The new owner moves in next week." Devon exploded. "How could you sell the condo? I promised it to my wife. Hand over the sale money right now." His voice was a shout. His hands trembled. Tasha began to cry. "But Mom..." How could you do this to us? We were counting on this place. We had plans, we had dreams, and you destroyed them. I stood firm. I didn't move a muscle. I looked them directly in the eyes. This condo was mine. It wasn't yours. It was never yours, and I could do whatever I wanted with it. Devin took a step toward me. His face was red with anger. Don't you dare say that. I'm your son, your only family. That condo was my inheritance. It was the only thing you were going to leave me. Your inheritance? I repeated calmly. Devin, you're 38 years old, you have a job, you have your health, you have your whole life ahead of you, and you were already planning what to do with my things when I died. That's not being a son, that's being a vulture, Tasha shrieked, offended. How dare you talk to him like that? He gave you everything. He took care of you after your husband died. I gave a bitter laugh. Took care of me. Tasha, your husband visited once a month. Called only when he needed something, and the two of you spent the last few years treating me like a nuisance. Like something you had to tolerate until I stopped existing. But Mom, Devin began, his voice softer now, desperate. My wife and I have nowhere to go. We can't live on the street. We need that money. It's yours by right. By right? I asked incredulously. What right? The right to be my son, the right to have been born. That doesn't give you the right to my life or to what I decide to do with what is mine. Devin ran his hands through his hair. He was frantic. His perfect plan had collapsed. Then at least give us the sale money. If you already sold it, you have the cash. Give it to us. We can buy the house anyway, please. It was the first time in years I had heard him say please, but it wasn't a genuine please. It was the plea of someone who is losing and knows it. Tasha approached me. Mama Clara, please think about us. Think about the grandkids you could have. If we don't have a house, how are we going to start a family? How are we going to give you those grandkids you want so much? The grandkids I want so much, I repeated softly. Tasha, you never wanted to give me grandchildren. You wanted to use the idea of grandchildren to manipulate me, to make me feel guilty, to force me to hand over everything. She backed away as if I had slapped her. That's not true. We do want a family. Then what happened to the money? Devin interrupted. Where is it? In my account, I replied. I used one part to buy a new condo, smaller, cozier for me, and the rest is invested for my old age, for my peace of mind, for me. Devin looked at me with pure hatred. You're selfish, a selfish old woman who only thinks about herself. And what did you expect me to do? I shouted back. Give you everything and be left with nothing? Live off scraps hoping you'd be kind enough to come and see me once a year, Tasha was sobbing dramatically. But we wanted you with us. We were going to take care of you. A lie, I said firmly. You didn't want to take care of me. You wanted my money, and when you had it, you would have put me in the cheapest assisted living center you could find. Devin shook his head. You're paranoid. You're making things up. I'm not making anything up, I said, and then I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I have proof. Proof of what? Tasha asked, her voice shaking. Of everything, of every conversation where you talked about me as if I were already dead, of every plan you made behind my back, of every cruel word you said thinking I couldn't hear you. The color drained from Devin's face. You recorded us? I recorded you, I confirmed, because I needed to be sure I wasn't imagining things. I needed proof that you truly only saw me as a means to get what you wanted. Devin took a step toward me, his fists clenched. Give me that phone right now. No, I replied, stepping back. These recordings are my insurance, just in case you decide to do something stupid. Like what? Tasha asked. Like trying to sue me? Like trying to take away what's mine? Like trying to invent that I'm senile or incapable of making decisions? I've seen enough stories to know how this works. Devin gave a humorless laugh. You're crazy. Completely crazy. Maybe, I said, or maybe I finally regained my sanity after years of letting myself be walked all over. There was a moment of tense silence. The three of us stared at each other. The air was thick with rage, pain, and truths that had finally come to light. Then Tasha spoke, her voice cold. We'll never forgive you for this. Never. I can live with that, I replied. Devin pointed toward the door. Come on, Tasha. There's nothing left for us here. She followed him, but before stepping out, she turned to me. I hope that money makes you happy, Mama Clara, because it's going to cost you your only family. It cost me my family a long time ago, Devin, I said. I just didn't realize it until now. They left, slamming the door. The sound echoed in the empty condo. I stood there alone, but I didn't feel lonely. I felt victorious. I felt free. For the first time in years, I had defended what was mine. I had said no, and I had survived. I sat on the floor again. My legs were trembling from the adrenaline. My heart was still racing. But there was something else, something warm in my chest. It was relief. It was peace. It was the feeling of having taken my life back. I stayed in that empty condo for almost an hour, sitting on the floor, looking at the bare walls, processing everything that had just happened. I didn't regret it. Not for a second did I doubt my decision. But there was something in the air, a feeling of finality, of closure. This place had been my home for 30 years. I had cooked thousands of meals here. I had mourned my husband's death here. I had grown old in solitude here, and now here I had reclaimed my freedom. I stood up slowly, walked through every empty room, touching the walls with my fingertips. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for everything." And I left, closing the door behind me for the last time. When I arrived at my new condo, the contrast was absolute. The windows let in natural light. The space was small but welcoming. Everything smelled new, of possibilities, of beginnings. I made myself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled genuinely. Not a forced smile, not a polite smile, but a smile of real satisfaction. I had done something for me. I had chosen my well-being over the manipulation of others, and that felt powerful. The phone rang, interrupting my moment of peace. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but finally did. "Hello." On the other end was a woman's voice I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Johnson, this is Simone, Tasha's sister. I need to talk to you." My stomach tightened. Simone. Tasha had told her sister everything, and now came the second assault, the attempt to guilt me through a third party. "Go ahead," I replied, my voice neutral. "Mrs. Johnson, Tasha told me what happened, and I want you to know I'm very disappointed in you. How could you do that to your own son? He needed you, and you turned your back on him." I took a deep breath. "Simone, with all due respect, you don't know the whole story. You only know the version your sister told you, the version where I'm the villain. But there's a lot more to it," she scoffed. "What more could there be? You sold the condo your son needed. That's all I need to know. My son didn't need that condo," I replied firmly. "My son wanted that condo. There's a huge difference." Simone continued, her voice hard and accusatory. "Tasha is devastated. Devin is devastated. You destroyed their dreams, their plans for the future, and for what? To buy a smaller unit and save money you won't even live long enough to spend. It's pure selfishness." I listened to her without interrupting. I let her say everything she had to say, and when she finally fell silent, waiting for my response, I spoke with a calm that surprised even me. "Simone, I understand you want to defend your sister. That's natural. But let me ask you something. When was the last time Devin and Tasha visited me without asking for something? When was the last time they called just to see how I was? When was the last time they treated me like a person and not like a bank?" There was an uncomfortable silence on the other end. "They have their lives, Simone," finally said with less conviction. "Their jobs, their responsibilities." "Exactly," I replied. "They have their lives and I have mine, and my life doesn't consist of eternally sacrificing myself so they can live comfortably." Simone tried to argue more. "But Mrs. Johnson, you're his mother. Parents should always help their children. They should always be there." "I was there for 38 years, I said, raising my voice slightly. "I gave my son everything I could, but there comes a time when children have to stand on their own 2 feet, and if at 38 Devin is still expecting me to solve his life, then I failed as a mother. But I won't keep failing by allowing him to use me." Simone hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at the phone. I knew it wouldn't be the last call, that Tasha and Devin would try to use other people to pressure me, to guilt me, to break me. But I had already made my decision, and no one was going to change my mind. That night, before sleeping, I checked my bank account online. The money was there, over $100,000. It was more money than I had ever had combined in my entire life, and it was mine alone. No one could take it. No one could demand it. It was my safety net. My freedom materialized in numbers on a screen. I slept peacefully that night. No nightmares, no anxiety, just peace. The following days were strangely normal. I dedicated myself to settling into my new condo. I bought plants for the windows. I hung light beige curtains. I organized my books on the small shelf. Everything I did reminded me that this space was mine, that no one would come to judge it, that no one would come to tell me I should change this or that. It was my refuge, my kingdom. A week later, I received a text message from Devin. It was long, full of carefully chosen words. "Mom," it began, I've had time to think, and I believe we both said hurtful things. I know I failed you as a son. I know I haven't been present like I should, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. You are my mother, and always will be. I wish we could talk, that we could figure this out. I read the message 3 times, searching for sincerity between the lines, but I didn't find it. At no point did it say, "I'm sorry." At no point did it acknowledge the real harm he had done to me. It was just a generic apology. One more attempt to get close and see if he could still get something. I didn't reply. I simply put the phone away and got on with my day. 2 days later, another message arrived. This one was from Tasha. "Mama Clara, please don't close the doors on us. I know we made mistakes, but everyone deserves a second chance. Devin is doing very badly. He barely eats, barely sleeps. He's still trying to figure out how to fix things with you. Please give him that chance." I didn't reply to that one either because I knew it was theater. Emotional manipulation, a last-ditch effort to soften me up. One afternoon, while enjoying the sun in a park near my new condo, I saw an older woman sitting on a bench. She was alone, feeding pigeons with breadcrumbs. I walked over and sat beside her. "It's a beautiful day," I said. She smiled. "Beautiful indeed," she confirmed. "I come here every day. It's my time for peace." I asked her if she had family. She nodded. 3 children, 8 grandkids, but I barely see them. They're busy with their lives, and I understand. I don't want to be a burden. Her words reminded me of myself just months ago. "You are not a burden," I told her. "You are a person, and you deserve to be treated as such." She looked at me surprised and then smiled with tears in her eyes. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." We talked for almost an hour. She told me about her life, her struggles, her disappointments, and I told her mine about Devin, Tasha, the condo, my decision. She listened without judgment. When I finished, she took my hand. "You did the right thing," she said firmly. "I wish I had your courage, but I'm afraid of being completely alone. Being alone isn't the worst thing that can happen," I told her. "The worst thing is being surrounded by people who make you feel alone." She nodded slowly as if those words had touched something deep inside her. We said our goodbyes with a hug, and as I walked back home, I felt something new: connection, empathy, purpose. I had spent so much time focused on my broken relationship with Devin that I had forgotten there were other people in the world, other stories, other lonelinesses I could share. That night, I made a decision. I would look for activity groups for seniors, classes, workshops, whatever. I needed to build a new life, a life that didn't revolve around my son. I went online and started searching. I found a painting workshop that met on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the afternoon. I had never painted in my life, but something in the description caught my eye. Expression without judgment, creativity without pressure, community without commitment. I signed up before I could regret it. The first workshop was in 3 days, and though I felt nervous, I also felt excited. An excitement I hadn't felt in years, the thrill of starting something new, of discovering a part of myself I had never explored. Meanwhile, the messages from Devin and Tasha continue to arrive, increasingly desperate, increasingly manipulative. "Mom, please. You can't ignore us forever. We're your family." "Mama Clara, Devin is considering therapy. He really wants to change. He just needs your support. Mom, at least reply so we know you're okay. We're worried about you." Each message was an attempt to reopen the door I had closed, but I was no longer the same woman who let herself be convinced by sweet words. I was someone new, someone stronger, someone who had finally learned that saying no doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person with boundaries. And boundaries aren't walls. They are doors you choose, when to open and when to keep closed. On Sunday, I received one last call. This time it was from a number I recognized. It was Brenda, a distant cousin I hadn't seen in years. "Clara May," she said seriously. "Devin called me. He told me what happened, and I want to tell you that I understand your position, but I also want to ask you to consider forgiveness. Family is the most important thing, and holding grudges only hurts yourself." I listened to her words, took a deep breath, and replied, "Brenda, it's not a grudge. It's a decision. The decision not to allow myself to be hurt anymore. And if family is so important, why didn't Devin show it when he could? Why does he only remember family when he needs something?" She didn't know how to respond, and I took advantage of the silence. "I appreciate your call, Brenda, but this decision has already been made," and I hung up. Tuesday arrived faster than I expected. It was the day of my first painting class. I woke up early, had a calm breakfast, and dressed in comfortable clothes, gray slacks, a soft ivory blouse. Nothing special, but I felt good. When I arrived at the location, it was a small, light-filled room. There were 6 other people, all women, all over 50. The teacher's name was Ms. Eleanor Vance. She had white hair pulled back in a messy bun and a warm smile that made you feel immediately welcome. "Good morning," she said softly. "Today we're not going to worry about making anything perfect. We're just going to let our hands express what we feel." And so my new life began. At first I felt clumsy. The brush trembled in my hand, the colors mixed in strange ways on the canvas. But Ms. Vance walked among the tables saying beautiful things. There are no mistakes in art, only discoveries. After an hour, something inside me relaxed. I stopped thinking. I stopped judging every stroke and I simply painted. I don't know what I was creating. It was abstract, chaotic, but it was mine. And when the class ended, I felt lighter, as if I had let out something I had been holding on to for years. The other women also shared their work. Each one had a story. Each one had her battles, and no one judged anyone else. It was a safe space, a space where I could just be Clara May, not someone's mother, not someone's widow, just me. After the class, one of the women approached me. Her name was Ruth Baker. She had short curly hair and an infectious laugh. "It's your first time, right?" she asked me. "Yes," I replied. "It shows, but in a good way. You clearly have a lot to get out." We laughed together. She invited me to grab coffee. We went to a nearby cafe, and as we drank our hot cups, Ruth told me her story. She had been married for 40 years. Her husband died 3 years ago, and her children lived in other cities. They visited once a year if she was lucky. "I was so depressed at first," she told me. "I felt like my life was over. But one day, I decided that if no one was going to live my life for me, then I had to do it myself. And here I am, painting, dancing, living." Her words resonated deeply with me. That was exactly what I was doing, reclaiming my life. Ruth became my first real friend in years. We started getting together after every class. Sometimes we had coffee, sometimes we walked in the park, and we always talked about everything and nothing without filters, without judgment. It was liberating to have someone who understood what it meant to reinvent yourself at this age. 2 weeks passed, 2 weeks of peace, of new routines, of days filled with small joys. But of course the peace couldn't last forever. One Friday afternoon, someone knocked on my condo door. I wasn't expecting visitors. I looked through the peephole and my heart stopped for a second. It was Tasha. I opened the door just a crack. "What are you doing here?" I asked, not inviting her in. Tasha looked different, thinner, more tired. She had deep circles under her eyes. "Mama Clara, please, I just want to talk. 5 minutes, that's all." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, but another part felt curious. What could she possibly want now? I opened the door fully but didn't let her step inside. "Speak," I said, crossing my arms. Tasha took a deep breath. I came to apologize. "Truly, Devon doesn't know I'm here. He's angry. He says he'll never forgive you, but I can't live like this. I can't live with this tension, with this resentment. I need you to know that I'm sorry, and that I understand why you did what you did." Her words sounded rehearsed, like a prepared speech. "You're sorry," I repeated, "or you're sorry you lost access to the money." Tasha lowered her gaze. "I know you think we only cared about the money, and maybe at first we did, but we weren't bad people, Mama Clara. We were just desperate, scared of the future, and we saw your condo as the solution to all our problems. But that didn't give us the right to treat you the way we did." At least she recognized something. That was more than Devon had done. "I appreciate your apology, Tasha, but it doesn't change anything." She looked up quickly. "But we could start over. We could build a real relationship. No self-interest, no pressure, just as family." I sighed. "I wish I could believe you, but regaining trust takes time, and honestly, I don't know if I have that time or that energy." Tasha nodded slowly. Tears began to roll down her cheeks. "I understand. I just wanted you to know that not everyone is like Devon, that I truly regret it, and that if you ever decide to give us another chance, I'll be here." She turned to leave, but before going down the stairs, I turned toward her. "Tasha," she stopped. "If you really want to show me that you've changed, don't do it with words. Do it with actions and not toward me. Do it for yourself. Build your life without depending on inheritances, without waiting for others to solve your problems. That's the only way I could ever consider you someone truly different." She nodded and left. I don't know if she would really change. Probably not, but at least she had attempted something Devon never did, acknowledging her error. That night, I sat down and thought about everything that had happened over the last month. I had sold my condo. I had confronted my son. I had set boundaries. I had started painting. I had made a friend. I had regained my dignity. And even though there were still moments of doubt, of sadness, of wondering if I had done the right thing, deep down, I knew the answer. I had done exactly what I needed to do. I had saved myself because no one else was going to. The following days continued their quiet rhythm. The painting classes became my favorite part of the week. Miss Vance taught us to use different techniques: watercolor, oil, acrylic, and each time I felt freer, more myself. One afternoon while I was painting, Miss Vance approached my table. "Clara May," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Have you noticed how your painting has changed since you started?" I looked at her confused. "How so? At first you painted with small, fearful, controlled strokes, but now your strokes are broad, confident, free. That speaks of an internal change, a liberation." I felt a lump in my throat because she was right. I had changed. And that change was reflected even in things I hadn't noticed. "I went through something difficult recently," I told her. "I had to make decisions that hurt, but that were necessary." Miss Vance smiled. "The best decisions always hurt at first, but then they give you wings." Those words stayed with me. Gave me wings. Yes, that was exactly what I felt. As if after years of being tied down, I could finally fly. Ruth and I started planning a short trip, just a weekend, to a nearby coastal town to visit museums, to wander aimlessly, to enjoy life without asking anyone's permission. It was a small thing, but it meant everything. It meant I could make plans, that my life wasn't over, that there were still adventures to live. When I told Ruth about my situation with Devin, she didn't judge me. She just hugged me and said, "Children don't understand that parents also have the right to live. They think we were born just to serve them. But you taught them something important. You taught them boundaries." 3 months had passed since the confrontation. 3 months of tranquility, of new routines, of painting, of friendship with Ruth, of afternoons in the park, of evenings reading on my small but comfortable sofa. My life had found a rhythm that made me happy. It wasn't an explosive happiness. It was a calm, deep, real happiness. But as often happens, just when you get used to the peace, the past knocks on your door again. It was a Saturday morning. I was brewing coffee when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting visitors. I looked through the peephole and my heart paused for a second. It was Devin alone without his wife. He looked different, thinner, with an unshaved beard, with dark circles that spoke of sleepless nights. I hesitated before opening, but something in his posture made me do it. I opened the door but stayed in the frame, blocking the entrance. "What do you want, Devin?" He held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "I just want to talk. No screaming, no demands, just talk, please." There was something in his voice that sounded different, more broken, more real. I let him in. We sat in the small living room. He looked around with a strange expression. "This is your new place?" he asked. "Yes, it's fine, small, but enough for me." He nodded in silence. There was a long moment of uncomfortable quiet, and then he spoke. "Mom, I came to tell you that you were right about everything." I raised an eyebrow, surprised. Devin never admitted mistakes. "Go on," I said. He ran his hands over his face. "The last 3 months have been the worst of my life. Tasha and I almost split up. We lost the house we wanted. I had trouble at work because I was so distracted, and all because I couldn't accept that I had lost something that was never mine." I stayed silent, letting him speak. "I went to therapy," he continued.